Have we been wrong about Kashin Koji this entire time? See, immediately when all of us heard that Kashin Koji was the clone of Jiraiya, we assumed he was on the side of the good guys. I mean, yeah, sure, he was a clone created by Amado, but he was a clone created by Amado so Amado could destroy Jigen. And he did that. He served his purpose. And to take it even one step further, he's now not even working with Amado, who's a sketchy, ambiguous character. Kashin Koji has very clearly drawn a line in the sand, and Amado is not to cross it. And now instead of holding his alliance with Amado, he's sided with Boruto as a mentor of sorts. And using his 10 paths that he awoke to at the end of his battle against these Shiki, he's helped Boruto figure out things like Flying Raijin and Rasengan Uzuhiko. He's guided him away from danger. He's put him in key locations to curb violence. You're probably wondering yourself, Nick, how could Kashin Koji be anything but a good guy? Well, I got an email the other day from a person by the name of Breeksy with the title, Kashin Koji, the Hidden Manipulator. Is he actually the true villain of Boruto? And I'm gonna be real. Theories that I'm emailed are a real dime in a dozen. But this one might be a dime. See, because of the recent events of Chapter 22, and Boruto seeming to stand a pretty good chance against Jiraiya, even though Kashin Koji has only preached about how Boruto would die immediately if he came face to face with Jiraiya in a battle, has started to get people thinking that maybe Kashin Koji doesn't have the most altruistic intentions. Maybe Kashin Koji is still an asset of Amado. And maybe Kashin Koji presented himself to Boruto when he was at his literal lowest so that Boruto would accept him without asking too many questions. See, this isn't a theory that I've ever thought of. But when you take a step back and you truly examine all the things that Kashin Koji has done over the course of his relationship with Boruto, I'm gonna be real with you. It seems a bit fishy. I mean, this is a man who's been able to see the future for years, and yet didn't have Boruto move into action to stop what he identified as the worst possible future with the Shinju until it was too late. Something is off about Kashin Koji, and today I want to figure out exactly what it is. Because today we're talking Kashin Koji is the true final villain of Boruto. But before we get to unpacking this bad version of Jiraiya, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you guys are looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video a week, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. We are on to the Chunin exams. But before we get into all that, today I want to talk to you about our favorite recurring sponsor to the page, Raycon. Mother's Day is now behind us, and Father's Day is on the horizon. And there's no better gift for the dads out there than Raycon's everyday headphones. See, whether your dad's lifting big at the gym, or busy with endless work calls, or jamming out to Queens of the Stone Age, or Nirvana, or whatever dads listen to, give your father the gift of premium audio wherever he goes. Raycon's latest model of everyday headphones is their best yet, with 40-hour battery life and a comfortable ergonomic design. I know when I'm doing weights at the gym and I want to listen to Otaku's Anonymous, the hybrid active noise cancellation of these headphones comes in massively clutch. I don't want to listen to the top 50 hits on repeat while I try to do back and buys. And trust me when I say, your dad doesn't want to either. And therefore, not only are you getting one of the lightest pairs of headphones on the market, making them substantially more comfortable for extended wears than the rest of the competition, you're also getting active noise cancellation and a 40-hour battery life for under $100. On top of that, if you go to buyraycon.com/NCHammer2315, you'll get 15% off site-wide. So there's never been a better or more cash-efficient way to give your father the premium audio he deserves. What are you waiting for? He's done so much for you, it's time you do something back for him. So, Kashin Koji, supposed good guy, clone of Jiraiya, and alleged manipulator. What evidence do I have to put forward today to prove that Kashin Koji is actually trying to manipulate Boruto? Well, the basis for this theory presented itself in the most recent chapter of Boruto's 2 Blue Vortex, Chapter 22. See, Kashin Koji has been talking about his 10 paths ability pretty much non-stop since the beginning of 2 Blue Vortex, an ability that allows him to see all possible futures. And apparently using that ability, Kashin Koji has seen an infinite amount of timelines where Boruto flies off the battle against Jiraiya in the Land of Wind, and in every single one of them, he loses. And while I'll absolutely admit that Boruto's not exactly crushing it in this battle against Jiraiya, the idea that there is literally no chance for Boruto winning a one-on-one against Jiraiya just seems relatively unlikely, especially when you consider the fact that he was able to land multiple hits against Jiraiya in Chapter 22. In fact, Boruto did so well in the battle against Jiraiya that Ada, who was watching with her Senrigan, Raycon, legitimately asked Kashin Koji if he was sure that Boruto couldn't win this. And that brings us to the talking point of how Kashin Koji talks about how interactions between Jura and Boruto will go down. See, Kashin Koji talks about Jura like Boruto stands legitimately no chance, like Jura will one-shot him the second he sees it. However, this seems to imply that for the entirety of Jura and Boruto's relationship, Kashin Koji has believed that Jura wants Boruto dead. And here's the thing, that hasn't always necessarily been true. Jura's actually had multiple opportunities to kill Boruto. Whether it was during their first meeting when Boruto was locked up in a wood-release cocoon, or when the bug Shinju popped out of Jura's chest and stopped him kind of from landing a fatal blow on the unconscious Boruto with a sniper Bijou bomb. In both of these scenarios, Jura could have rather easily finished Boruto off. However, either because he didn't have time, even though he absolutely did, or because he was curious about Boruto, he's halted himself from killing Boruto. On top of this, when Jura has actually tried to kill Boruto, he's kind of come up short. Jura has officially fired 3 separate Bijou sniper shots at Boruto, or at least has attempted 3 Bijou bomb sniper shots at Boruto. The first of which that hit Boruto, though not in a vital spot, the second of which was interrupted by the bug Shinju, and the third of which was fired in chapter 22, which just completely missed. And thus it doesn't seem as though Jura has as much instant killability of Boruto as Kashin Koji has led us to believe. But some of you are probably saying, but Nick, he has the 10 paths. He's seen Boruto die thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not millions of times in a battle against Jura. And like, yeah, no, you're probably right. He can very clearly see the future. He has multiple times placed Boruto in exactly the correct position so that he can make the right choice. Like having Boruto show up in Konoha the second that Code decided to launch his invasion, placing a tracking toad on Code so he can jump to it and try and stop him before he's able to create the Shinju, and a myriad of other very similar situations. Kashin Koji can very clearly see the future. However, Kashin Koji's been able to see the future for years. In fact, Kashin Koji has been able to see the future ever since his battle against Ishiki, which, mind you, happens in chapter 45 of part 1. Now, obviously, Kashin Koji didn't leave that fight in the best of shape, and so there's probably a month or so period where he needed to heal, but there's a lot of like really important things that happen between Kashin Koji getting the 10 paths and where we're at in the story right now. All things that, if prevented, probably would have stopped the Shinju from ever coming into existence in the first place. See, well, obviously Kashin Koji was able to predict the emergence of the Shinju, and he identified that as the worst possible future. Multiple things had to happen before the world could be put in a place where the Shinju could exist. Things like Code attacking Konoha and getting his grubby little claw hands on Amado so that he can lift his limiters, Naruto and Hinata being sealed by Kawaki, the firing of Omnipotence, and so much more. And there's really no reason for us to assume that Kashin Koji wasn't privy to all of these details. See, because if Code never gets his limiters taken off, while he would still be one of the more powerful foes in the Naruto universe, people like Sasuke would be able to take care of him rather easily, even without his 6 Tomei Rinnegan. If somehow Kashin Koji is able to step in before Kawaki throws Naruto and Hinata in the Daikokuten, there's a fair shot that Kawaki and Boruto and the rest of the Uzumaki Hyuga household are able to have a conversation about healthy boundaries. And thus Omnipotence is never fired, Boruto and Kawaki's positions are never swapped, and Konoha is in an exponentially better position to deal with the threat of the Shinju. However, it's really not until the Shinju show up that Kashin Koji's like, oh, we gotta stop this. And I know what some of you are thinking right now, but Nick, Kashin Koji probably has seen a future where Boruto and humanity prevail over the Shinju. And you're right, he probably has seen one of those futures. However, Kashin Koji has multiple times highlighted the fact that the Shinju just emerging would lead to the worst possible future. And for those of you who are saying, oh, but Nick, if Boruto wasn't thrown out of the village, he never would have gotten as powerful as he currently is. And while that may be true, Boruto could train with Sasuke inside the village. And if Kashin Koji inserted himself into the story at an earlier date, he also could have taught Boruto about Rasengan Uzehiko and Flying Raijin. Do I think Boruto would be as strong as he currently is if he wasn't expelled from the village and had to live with Sasuke and Kashin Koji for 3 whole years? No. However, Boruto wouldn't need to be as powerful as he currently is if the Shinju threat was simply avoided. Since we're talking about the idea of Kashin Koji inserting himself into Boruto's life, why did he wait until Boruto was at his lowest? See, it's obviously very clear that at some point during the time skip, Kashin Koji realized he needed to be training Boruto. But why did he only make that realization after Sasuke had already been turned into a tree? If Kashin Koji fully understood the threat of the Shinju, why would he wait until one of the most powerful people on Earth was already to be turned into one? Why wouldn't Kashin Koji present himself to Sasuke and Boruto and save Sasuke from being turned into a Shinju? You can say that maybe Sasuke would have attacked Kashin Koji, but Sasuke and Kashin Koji had no interface prior to that moment. Sasuke would have no real reason to attack Kashin Koji. And while you can use the excuse that, oh, Kashin Koji was under the effect of omnipotence, and it wasn't until about a year after omnipotence that he was able to break himself out of it, but Kashin Koji himself admits to still being under the effect of omnipotence, and says that the reason that he was able to come to Boruto in the first place is because he saw that omnipotence would be fired using the 10 paths. So Kashin Koji should have always been aware that Boruto was fighting on the side of good. And yet he waited until not only Sasuke was turned into a tree, but Boruto was literally cornered to insert himself into Boruto's life at his lowest and most desperate, and therefore most willing to accept Kashin Koji. And listen, maybe Kashin Koji with the 10 paths identified that this would be the best moment to eject himself into Boruto's life, because maybe Kashin Koji using the 10 paths saw that in every other moment where he tried to inject himself into Boruto's life, Boruto and or Sasuke rejected him, and the world was led to ruin. But you have to admit, the timing is a bit suspicious. His parents have been abducted into the Daikokuten, his friends have turned against him, his sensei is a tree, and when he's alone in a cave, backed into a corner like a feral dog, that's when Kashin Koji nabs him. Kashin Koji could have done so much more, so much sooner. He could have warned Konoha about Code, killed Amado so he couldn't lift Code's limiters, been at the location of the firing of omnipotence and broken it up before it could happen. I mean, after all, he did say that with the 10 paths, he saw that it was going to happen. And thus it genuinely appears as though that Kashin Koji is benefiting from the chaos derived from him not stepping in. But what's the benefit? How could Kashin Koji possibly benefit from chaos, death, and the possible end of the world? Well, it's important to remember here Kashin Koji's roots. Kashin Koji is essentially a walking pile of shinobi wear in the form of a Jiraiya clone created by Amado. And while Kashin Koji and Amado may seem broken up for the moment, what if they're not? I mean, we're still suspicious of Amado and what its intentions inside of Konoha are, right? So why would we be immediately unsuspicious of Kashin Koji just because Kashin Koji said, oh, Amado only made me to die and now I hate him? Sure, it's very clear and obvious that Amado doesn't do an incredible job at keeping a leash on his creations, but the one creation that seemed subservient to Amado was Kashin Koji. See, because if we are assuming that all Amado wants to accomplish inside of Konoha is bring his daughter back to life, and honestly, nowadays that feels like a more and more compelling argument, as we have literally seen that he has tubes filled with copies of his daughter ready to be uploaded by Kawaki at any moment. Now, as to whether or not his daughter is some kind of Otsutsuki or incredibly powerful foe, or maybe even Shibai, that's for a different day's conversation. If we are just assuming that Amado is in Konoha right now to bring Akebi back to life, then pretty much everything he's done up until this moment has perfectly served that idea. See, Amado wants an Otsutsuki, of which there are now only two, those being Boruto and Kawaki, to use the power of the karma marking to implant a karma marking on a clone of Akebi that has her personality and memories on it, so the karma marking can upload onto the clone, and once that karma marking is fully uploaded, Akebi is just back in a way better version than Delta. But the problem is, in order to accomplish that, one of the two existing Otsutsukis who would work with Amado, those being Kawaki or Boruto, would have to be shed of their pre-existing karma markings, because those pre-existing karma markings don't have Akebi's data. And thus it would behoove of Kashin Koji to get rid of the karma markings of one of those two Otsutsukis, which is exactly what he did with Kawaki. Amado went to the most powerful village on Earth in Konoha, where also the two Otsutskis were living, and said, hey, by the way, I've been working underground with Kara this entire time, and they got a really bad dude named Jigen. You've actually met him already. He beat your two strongest fighters to a pulp. However, if you work with me, we could not only get rid of him, but also maybe I could get my hands on that child you have and place a new karma marking on him. But I don't know, what was that second part? And this is effectively exactly what happened. Amado was able to use Kashin Koji to fulfill the supposed purpose that Kashin Koji was created for, which was the elimination of Jigen and the awakening of Ishiki. Now, this alone technically accomplishes everything that Amado needed. Kawaki was free of his karma marking, and it was because of the work that Kashin Koji put in. Now, obviously, a big part of this plan was also keeping Kawaki alive long enough so we could use the karma marking with Akebi's DNA on an Akebi clone. However, that was unfortunately a kind of complicated process because Ishiki was looking for Kawaki and because Kawaki seemingly has a death wish. But even though Kashin Koji was successful in the task of killing Jigen and awakening Ishiki, it was while he was battling against Ishiki that he realized that Amado built him to die. Or at least that's what he told us. But that's That's kind of a dumb idea. See, if we're sitting here just assuming that Kashin Koji genuinely had no idea that inside of Jigen was Ishiki, and had genuinely no idea that Ishiki was going to be leaps and bounds stronger than Jigen, then maybe, just maybe, it does make a little bit of sense that Kashin Koji could be sent into this battle blind, and therefore would be upset with Amado for sending him in the first place. But what's the tactical advantage for Kashin Koji to go into this fight blind? Sure, you can say that Kashin Koji was made to die by Amado, and he accomplished his task. However, Amado surely understood that there was really no difference as to whether or not Kashin Koji was aware that Ishiki would break out of Jigen or not. Amado knew that Kashin Koji wouldn't be able to defeat Ishiki in a fight. However, he was at least partially aware that Kashin Koji stood a chance of defeating a weakened Jigen. And as that was all that Amado was trying to accomplish, why wouldn't the mission be destroy Jigen and get out, especially when you consider the fact that Kashin Koji clearly has the ability to teleport to other places using his toads. Now I understand a world where Amado was like, well, I don't need this toy anymore, he might as well try to kill Ishiki, that'd be kind of dope. But even if Kashin Koji was unable to defeat Ishiki, that's hardly Amado's fault. And thus, I really don't believe the division between Kashin Koji and Amado is as big as Kashin Koji is trying to make us believe. See, chapter 44, right before Koji went to fight against Jigen, seemed to highlight a moment where Kashin Koji was aware of what Amado was trying to accomplish. Because when Koji and Amado split up, Koji looks at Amado and says, "You don't look like you packed enough. Are you sure you brought all the things you need?" To which Amado responds to by saying, "I just need a little bit of DNA and the data." Undoubtedly referring to all of the things that Amado would need to bring Akebi back to life. The DNA to make a clone and the data to imprint on the karma marking. Which means that Kashin Koji was seemingly fully aware of what Amado was trying to accomplish, wiping the karma marking off Kawaki and placing a new one that allows for Amado to bring Akebi back to life. And thus Kashin Koji was seemingly aware that all he was really trying to accomplish was the eradication of the karma marking on Kawaki, a process he very clearly understood if Amado was talking openly with him about the things he needed to accomplish said process. However, the real kicker to all of this, and the linchpin behind the idea that Kashin Koji and Amado may still be working together, is that after Kashin Koji's battle against Ishiki, his body was wrecked. Kashin Koji admits at the end of his battle against Ishiki that his left flank and his left arm are destroyed, and that he cannot move his legs. So effectively, all that was left of Kashin Koji after his battle against Ishiki was the right side of his torso and his right arm, at least in terms of things that worked. And yet Kashin Koji currently exists in Two Blue Vortex 100% healthy, with both functioning arms when his left arm is very clearly ripped off at the end of his battle against Ishiki, and functioning legs, when he should have been at least a paraplegic at the end of his battle against Ishiki. So how did Kashin Koji heal? Did he heal himself? Does he have some kind of ridiculous healing factor that allows for him to regrow arms? I mean, maybe the only other clone in the story that we could possibly compare Kashin Koji to is Mitsuki, who doesn't have that kind of healing factor. But sure, his body is made almost entirely out of shinobi wear, but so is Kawaki's. And sure, Kawaki only lost his arm because he was hit with an anti-regeneration laser fired from Delta. Who's to say that if Kawaki had one of his arms cut off by a non-anti-regeneration laser, that he would have been able to regrow it? Now listen, it's not an impossible idea that Kashin Koji was able to heal himself. He had years to do it, and he was able to retreat to somewhere probably akin to Mount Muabuko. Maybe. We don't know if he has an actual connection to any toads, as his toads are canonically not toads from Mount Muabuko, and are actually shinobi tools created by Amado. But here's the thing, losing hands is just something that happens in the Naruto universe. Naruto lost his hand, Sasuke lost his hand, and Kawaki lost his hand. And while Naruto was able to get another semi-functioning hand after destroying it in his battle against Sasuke, created with Hashirama's cells and Shizune's ability to generate organs, the only other person that we've ever seen create fully functional arms has been Amado. Not only created a fully functioning arm that was powered through Naruto's chakra for Kawaki, but also a fully functioning shinobi-wear arm for Naruto that was able to absorb ninjutsu. And thus, if Kashin Koji did lose his arm at the end of the battle against Ishiki, if there was one person who would have been able to build him a new one, it would have been his creator. And considering the fact that we currently have no information on how Kashin Koji was able to heal after this battle with Ishiki, Amado may actually be our best possible answer. If Amado and Kashin Koji are still working together, and Kashin Koji is manipulating Boruto, what's his plan? Well, we can't currently say. However, it does appear as though Kashin Koji doesn't want Boruto anywhere near Jura. Which, I mean, obviously is fair on account of the fact that if Juro were to consume Boruto, he might turn into a divine tree that literally destroys the entire planet. But Kashin Koji should know that's not what Juro's going for. Juro just gained sentience, and he's not trying to lose it. That's like the core point of Juro as a character. And while Boruto dying is still not great, as he's pretty much humanity's greatest defender right now, Boruto dying would also kill Momoshiki, the last person who is actively actively trying to turn the world into a chakra fruit. So why would Kashin Koji possibly be manipulating Boruto? I don't know quite yet. Maybe to make Boruto more dependent on him? To have Boruto lower his guard around him so that Kashin Koji's able to pull a double cross at a strategically planned moment? Or maybe Kashin Koji is just actually a good guy who does foresee that Boruto's battle against Jura ends only badly. I mean, after all, Boruto did just hit Jura with a Rasengan Uzuhiko and it didn't affect him, and that's Boruto's strongest move. So what do you guys think? Do you believe that Kashin Koji may have a nefarious plan in mind, or do you think as the clone of Jiraiya, he has to be a good guy? Let me know in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Maybe the long game is just having Amado create a clone of Tsunade. I mean, I wouldn't complain.